Welcome back to episode 9 of the Muddy River Tactical Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Mason, joined by Brett Davis and Kevin Mason. We are going to talk about some pretty cool stuff today. On previous episodes, we talked about the 9mm, how it used to be a staple, then it lost popularity to the 40, and now it's back in favor. So we did some research. We're going to talk about the history of that, how that came about. Talk about some other stuff that's going on in the outdoors world right now, a couple big stories in the news. Talk a little bit about our leather inside the waistband holsters and just kind of go from there. So, kind of getting into it. First off, did anybody have anything awesome happen this weekend? Anything out of usual? Did you get any more bees, any zoo poo, any fun stuff like that?
I did have to move a chicken coop.
How do you move a chicken coop?
Well, he bought a chicken coop.
My wife bought a chicken coop, and I had to move a chicken coop. So she's got the chickens, but now she wants these silky...
Fancy chickens.
Yeah, they have fur instead of feathers, I guess. I don't know. But they're little...
Fur, the rats.
Yeah, they're little wobbling around chickens. But they'll get killed in the regular coop.
Does that make them better for eating or worse with fur?
We're not even eating them, is the bad part. They put out different colored eggs, but all of the eggs eat the same, so I don't know. But
So you got pre-made Easter eggs, basically, with silky chickens.
pretty much. So we had to go get a chicken coop to house just those so that they don't get killed by the other chickens.
So you have 2 chicken coops.
2 chicken coops.
So you got to scoop twice the amount
To
of
be
litter.
fair, the first one's a chicken palace. It's not
Yeah.
really a coop.
The other one's like a shed with a run on it.
Yeah.
How many snakes has she found in the coop yet?
Surprisingly, at our house, I've found 1 snake in the garage, and that's it.
Really? I figured that
Surprisingly.
thing would be full of black snakes up there eating the eggs and everything.
He's pretty far away from woods.
Not that.
So-
Not yet, anyways. But what was funny is we picked this thing up in Lee Summit. Me and Julie went out there, and then there's the people we bought it from, and they had somebody else help it. So it took like 5 of us to get it on the trailer. But anyways, we're going through this gas station out in Lee Summit before we head back 50 miles an hour so that the wind doesn't catch the chicken coop that stands 8 foot tall off the trailer. But there's a guy, like probably our age or something, with a kid walking. And they keep turning around, looking at the chicken coop and pointing at it. I told Julie, I'm like, you know what discussion they're having right now? He's telling his kid never to get married because this is what you end up doing on your Saturdays is hauling chicken coops.
Like Brett said on a previous episode, when she asked what are we doing, you always have something. Like you got truck maintenance or you better have something in the chamber ready to go when she asks you that question.
So Brett got to help move it off the trailer yesterday.
I'm surprised you didn't just pick it up with the skid steer.
No, this wasn't a small chicken coop. No, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not small.
It's not. It's 2-story. It's a pretty big chicken
We've got
coop.
running water and everything in it?
It's pretty close. It's got extra windows.
Satellite TV?
Which we made fun of. Like actual glass windows. It's got... Yeah.
So you've got the bougiest chickens in Platte County is what you're telling me.
Yeah, and they don't even have feathers. They got fur, so...
And they have no fear of getting eaten by anything other than coyotes.
Somebody probably
We're
sold
about
their
to find
rats and called them chickens. Silkies.
You need to get like
Very
a baby turkey and put it in there.
We got plenty of turkey around the farm that we need to start working on.
What about you, Brett? Do you do anything cool? Or
Nope. Wife and kids left town. Pretty
You
quiet.
got to do your maintenance job.
Yeah, I got to practice maintenance.
Maintenance finally showed up at my house after 6 months.
Yeah, I got the joy of doing taxes this weekend, and surprisingly, the amount of taxes I owe versus the increase that I had in pay last year was about 2 to 1. So I got to, instead of doing TurboTax, take it to somebody and let them mess with it, because it's like, how did I make marginally more but owe almost double in taxes? So I don't know whether tax codes changed.
Welcome to that next tax bracket.
Well,
I think
what
that
it
means
is.
he needs to make a little less money.
I'm down.
I do, or like get paid cash, or
Yeah.
get an OnlyFans or something to make way more money.
Only thing.
OnlyFans, hey, feet pictures sell really well.
Yeah, I don't think your feet pictures are going to sell well. though.
There's a market for everything. If you want like a gouty toe with some gangrene,
I don't want to meet the demographic that you're selling your feet pictures to.
well, that's a good thing. OnlyFans, you never have to meet them. It's kind of like the podcast,
Yeah.
So, all right, yeah. So I did taxes. Boys had football, a little bit of that, and a bunch of nothing. Ended up raining a little bit, so we didn't get to go do anything outside. too much fun. But going to talk about, there's a story going around all over. We were talking about shed hunting on here the other day, and specifically, I carried my my pistol on my pack while I'm shed hunting, and a lot of people have asked me, why do you carry it all the time? And just being out in the woods, I always carry one with me. You never know what you're going to come across. There's a couple kids in California, brothers, they were 18 and 21, and they were out looking for deer sheds, and they got attacked by a mountain lion. And the mountain lion killed the 21-year-old, and the 18-year-old survived, but he's got multiple surgeries and facial injuries. So he gets away, calls the sheriffs, and they go up and find, the scene, and the cat is still with the body, and ended up euthanizing the cat. And I guess it was a 90-pound mountain lion. And from what I've always heard, it's like typically like the juvenile cats, for lack of a better term. They're kind of out trying to find their range and all that. But
Well, I figured on that when I heard the story about it. I figured it would be like they walked up on cubs or something.
now this was a male 90-pound cat. So I guess they average between 70 and 170 pounds. So it's on the smaller end. So it leads me to believe it might have been a juvenile. They're 25 to 30 inches tall at the shoulder, so they're bigger.
A 90-pound cat ain't no small damn cat, though.
Oh yeah, they're not built
That's
like
bigger than my German Shepherd.
Like the big bobcats
Golden
around here that
Retriever.
are big are 35 pounds, and that's a really big bobcat.
Well, and they're saying that's like 6 to 8 feet long with the tail. So I mean,
yeah.
that's a monster. But anyway, statistically, they say you're 1,000 times more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to get attacked by the mountain lion. But that goes back to the shark thing and kind of some of the other stuff we talked about. But it just really kind of puts emphasis on what we talk about all the time about being prepared and why you should carry a firearm with you if you're able to when you're out in the woods.
And I think that's why, like, over the weekend especially, and who knows what starts it or whatever, I got more emails this weekend about the 10-millimeter guns. The SIG X10 was one of them that people, now that they made the compact version of it, I got like 6 emails on that gun and wanting it with lights and stuff. But like people, and not just, mountain lions are one thing, but bear country and all that other stuff that we don't really deal with around where we're at. But it seems like that pistol's becoming popular for that type of hiking, guys elk hunting, stuff like that out in.
And I wonder if it's more seasonal too, because like you're talking about, that's all mountain stuff. So snow's starting to get ready to melt in some spots, and people are going to be out on those mountain trails. And like the fly fishing, I know a bunch of people go up to the Boundary Waters, and I know the bears may not be as bad up there, but there's lots of places where the bears are super bad.
I have a cousin, speaking of, literally texting me right now about going to Montana, and he was asking me the rules of flying with a pistol. That may be something that we look into in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they've been popping up all over. They make these safes and they're TSA approved, and I'm going to try and reach out to them because they have a pretty cool new safe out. So I don't want to talk too much about it yet, but yeah, I'll definitely research that, figure out what people need to do. I know it's not as hard as it looks like. I know.
No, it's just time consuming.
And you gotta-
And
Basically
it's where you're flying to.
And that's it, knowing the rules of, and you may have
Layovers,
layover flights if
yep.
you're staying overnight, if you're going across into Canada. Like, that's a whole different thing, too, than if you're just staying stateside. So, real quick on the other stuff kind of in the news, there's a recall on the Smith & Wesson Response 9mm. That's, what would you call it? Not AR platform, but
It is an AR platform. Yeah, so it's an AR 9mm carbine is what it is. It's mostly polymer. Fairly new, maybe 6 months old, something like that, roughly. We got a letter in the mail that basically the round can fire out of battery, so that means it's not locked in place. What that can cause is obviously a mini explosion,
catastrophic failure,
Yeah.
barrel explosion.
stuff
And
like
aren't
that.
aren't those lowers polymer on those?
Yeah, majority of the gun is polymer, other than the chamber, stuff like that. The bolt is not polymer, obviously, but they basically reached out to us at the gun shop, wanted a list of all the customers that had bought them, so they could reach out to them because it's a pretty serious recall.
And if people don't get reached out to, I'm sure they can contact Smith & Wesson
Yeah,
through their
I've
website.
already reached out to everybody that I had contact info just to let them know
But
that
if
Smith is
your
going to.
gun shop hasn't, it's definitely a good thing because like the local people, but the people not local to us that didn't buy them from us, definitely call and find out what to do.
They do have a way to tell if your gun has been fixed, repaired, or not. Beside the 9mm caliber stamped on the bolt, they're putting a line on each side of the 9mm. If it has the lines on the bolt, then you're good to go.
Okay.
So,
yeah, and I was just thinking about people that may buy it at one shop and have it transferred here. Is that it's probably the original purchase point that would be contacting?
no, it really yes and no. But they reached out to us to go through my whole books.
Okay.
They're not taking it's a serious enough problem that they want all guns that were transferred, bought, whatever may be the case.
Because if it gets transferred, it's in our books the same. We can still look it up.
Now,
Yeah,
is there a list of, lack of better terms, where people may have a gun they're questioning about, where you can go online and see what guns have been recalled? Or
Sounds like any of them that are out right now.
Yeah, any of the response. It's actually said that was manufactured before February 24th.
so it's,
February 24th of 24.
So it's
So
almost
it's pretty
all-
almost all of them. So
So-
it's a really new recall and safety recall.
okay. So definitely important. If you got one of those, I would avoid firing it personally until you can get it checked out. Make sure everything's good with it, because that explosion right by your face would be horrible.
Or the other thing is to think about too is there's some people that don't want to jack with sending guns back and forth. You find a quote unquote great deal on one somewhere. It may be because they don't want to jack with it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. So last couple episodes, we have talked about our inside the waistband, our outside the waistband options. We've talked about leather holsters briefly on both of them. Not that this isn't as important, but there's not as in-depth conversation to be had. But we've got a few examples here. Kevin's got one of them over there in front of him. So for the people, who may not know about our leather holsters and what makes ours different, can you kind of just give them the 10,000 foot overview?
Yeah, so the main part of the soft leather holsters are for comfort. You take all other arguments aside, if you do not have your gun with you when something arises, it does you zero good. So this is really what I would consider a entry-level holster for those people that aren't used to inside the waistband holsters, because like we talked about, it's a transition getting used to something in your pants, no matter how big or small the gun is. So this leather being softer and it molds to your body and to the gun, it makes it as comfortable as inside the waistband holsters are going to get. So it doesn't have the click-in retention of Kydex and some of those other perks, but it's also half the price. It's a budget level and entry level holster at the same time. The other market that we see this a lot for is just for everyday carry stuff. There's guys that carry and find themselves not carrying all the time, just in certain situations, because they're like, oh, it's not comfortable or digging into them. We sell a lot of these to those people that they may not carry it all the time, but when they're wearing something or comfort matters more to them on that situation, they go to this.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's not, so in our Kydex holsters, each one's made specifically to the gun. In the leather, there's 8 different
There's
sizes?
like 8 different ones, and what it really comes down to is it's stitched to different frames. So if you look at concealed carry guns in general, or just pistols in general, you can put 100 of them together, and the frames are so close in size. So the way these mold, it's just based off of those sizes. So it's really more of a molding to your gun than a molded from the get-go.
Now, when they get that leather holster, this is a question I hear all the time, but how long does it take for that? Because it's kind of like a baseball glove. When you get a new baseball glove, you put the baseball in it and you wrap rubber bands around it. I'm not saying bake these holsters, but you condition the leather to fit the baseball. Is it the same on a leather holster?
Yeah, so on this natural water buffalo leather, it's got natural oils in it, which is why it feels soft and has that soft texture to it. So you do not really need to put like leather conditioner and all that stuff on it. You just wear it and it will mold. Roughly 1 to 2 weeks it will start, but they're one of those holsters that the longer you have it, the better they get. And people always ask all the time, like, what's the best way to break one in? Well, when you get it in the mail or get it from the store, push your thumb on the back of the slide and firmly push the pistol all the way into the holster, because they will be tight for a minute. let it sit like that overnight or for 24 hours, and then start wearing it, and then it will break in that way.
Now, if they leave it in the holster all the time, that's just naturally going to make it fit better as it adapts to it over time.
And the leather, like anything, it stretches to a certain point, and then it doesn't as much, but it still will stretch. So, I mean, this holster is not a holster that's going to last 10 years. You know, if you sweat on it every day and stuff, it's going to keep stretching. So our warranty and stuff covers all the normal wear and tear stuff, but if you have an 8-year-old holster that's $35, it doesn't cover the stretching. You know,
well, and really, for $35 in 8 years, you were in at $5 a year.
And it's going to be from you sweating on it and everything. It's going to have so much bacteria and nastiness to it, anyways.
Well,
you're probably better off with another one. Anyways.
And for most people, you know, and especially our customers are great. If they've worn it for 8 years, that means they loved it. If you wear,
they have no problem buying another one.
Yeah, they probably got 2 or 3 others for different size.
A couple questions that I get a lot of times in the gun shop, and for you, Kevin, is, and I know the answer, but I want you to kind of explain why. Lights and lasers on leather.
So what happens on a light or laser? Give me that light bearing holster right there. So if you can look, like this is a light bearing Kydex holster. So it comes down, all this is the gun and the light. If you did that in leather, if you imagine the same thing in leather and went over, it'd be like a pouch.
Big rectangle is
it'd
what
be
it
like
would be.
a big pouch. It doesn't work anywhere near the same. There's no trigger for it to stop. Like here it stops. With that, it would have to be sewn shut on the bottom to stop, which then dirt, lint, debris, everything gets stuck in the bottom, which you don't want. They just don't work well at all that way, so we just won't make them.
And all of ours are hand specific, so right-handed, left-handed, and they have sweat shields on them, which are a pretty universal size and height.
The next question is red dots.
Yeah.
So
they're all optic ready now. So in the past, we had them where it was optic or not. But what we found is so many people were calling, wanting to send it back to get optic cut because, like we talked about on other episodes, optics are the new craze and everything. I mean, everything's going to optics, or at least compatible for optics.
And from an engineering standpoint, that optic cut brings it down an inch, which on leather or Kydex is not going to affect. It's not going to make your pistol rock or not. They're going to fit the same.
It doesn't hurt anything for us. It allows us to keep the price cheaper because our main goal with these is to keep the price. Leather keeps going more expensive and more expensive. So for us, these are $39 now, and even at that, they need to go up, but we're just trying to use it as a budget thing.
which is pretty good because you were what, $35 for
They've always been 35
Yeah,
forever, and the leather's gone up triple since then. So every year we make less money off of these, but we never want to stop selling them because it gives people that comfort level.
And kind of talking about other things that we talk about, you could go with a cheaper kind of leather, but we stick with the water buffalo hide because that's the best.
If you go cheaper, you can go like suede and stuff like that, but there's a reason.
It's softer. It's going to wear out faster.
Yeah, there's a reason. And even those holsters are $40 now. So if that gives you a comparison, if you look at like any of those suede holsters that are synthetic material, they're not going to feel soft, they're not going to last, they're the same price. So that gives you an idea of how little margin we have in these. This is, we kind of talked about the gun shop as being a local service to people. This is the holster equivalent of being a service and not a profitable item.
So much better than the nylon.
Absolutely.
Now, as far as the clips that are on there, I see the just standard metal clip. Right now, we don't have options to change those.
Not on the soft leather. So there's a soft leather, which is what this is, and then I didn't bring a tuckable leather. The tuckable leather has the same cut, same everything. It is the same leather, but it's full grain. So this is 4 or 5 ounce leather, so it's split. A machine splits this leather down to that thickness.
Okay.
Whereas the tuckable leathers are 11 to 12 ounce full grain, so they're not split at all. So this piece comes out of a full grain version and can make 2 of these holsters compared to 1 of the tuckables. So with that said, the tuckables are not a budget level. If you're going to carry every day long term and not just use it as a in-between holster, you'll want to go to the tuckable leather for a multitude of reasons, but it's got thicker leather, so it's going to hold up better over time, be more secure, but it's also got a better belt clip on it that you can switch from a tuckable clip or an ulti clip. So the metal clip on the soft leather it's great for normal, and this is also where the entry level comes in. If you have a gun belt or something, you're normally not the entry level guy. If you got a Walmart belt or normal belt, this is the clip that will work for it. That's why we leave this clip on there. Whereas the tuckable clip goes to gun belt, stuff like that, as you progress down the line and get farther in your concealed carry journey.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Another, and I should have brought one, and maybe we will bring it in on another episode, but we have a comfort carry holster also, which is a Kydex shell mounted to a leather backer.
It's a very specific holster. It's not an entry-level holster. It's something for somebody that's carried for a while, knows what position they want to carry, because it's good for 4 or 5 o'clock, and that's it. Right behind the hip, right behind the hip, and that's all. It is more bulky because of the leather piece, but it's more secure because of the 2 clips.
And it's got a really wide footprint to it.
Yes, so it's not something that you want to go from not used to an inside the waistband holster to having that big of a holster. And I wear them all the time. They're great. I love them, but I wouldn't suggest it for somebody just stepping into the market.
Okay. Brett, do you got anything on the leathers? Or
Nope. I sell a lot of them. I mean, daily in the gun shop. I would say the soft leather is what I sell the majority of the time. We do have the tuckable. It's one of them ones that it takes a little longer to break in, so people usually stick with the soft leather.
The other question I had, the tuckable, you said it's more of a full grain. What's the price difference on that versus a standard leather?
They're about $15 different, something like that.
But again, that's because we got more in it. We're not really making
It's
any
double,
more money.
Double the leather, just like we talked about. We have little margin on this. It's double the leather. So it's the same way. The prices on both of them need to go up, and we just put it off and put it off. We'll see where that goes. We'll only be able to put it off so long because, like Brett said, it's been the same price for 10 years, and our costs have gone 3 or 4 times what they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even at that, even if we're competitive with the market, our customer service and the value we give people on other stuff, I feel more than makes up for it.
Absolutely.
So, on previous episodes, we've talked about, and I've asked Brett a lot, and I've kind of got an inquiring mind on some of the stuff and want to know answers. So, the 9mm versus 40. And, you talked about 9mm was popular for a long time, and then it switched to 40. Then everybody was at 40. Now, 40 is dead, but everybody's moving away from 40. So, over the past week and a half or two, I've been researching what really happened, what kind of was the basics of this. So you're going to get a history lesson from Kyle in my non-expert status on ballistics and bullets and stuff like that. So basically it kind of stemmed from a 1986 FBI shootout, and I believe that was down in Miami. There was an agent, and I don't know the whole background of why they were going after this specific guy, but got involved in a shootout with a suspect. Had a 9mm pistol. He shot the suspect in the chest. The 9mm didn't penetrate all the way to his heart. It stopped short, which let the suspect live and continue firing. That suspect ended up killing 2 other FBI agents and wounding 5 other people. So there's this huge backlash that happened because they're saying, look, if he'd had the right bullet or a 45 or whatever, he would have been dead and this wouldn't have happened. At the time, they were shooting 115 grain Winchester silver tips, which is a pretty reputable, anything the FBI is going to be shooting at that time is going to be reputable. So the investigation goes on, and it led to the FBI making an ammunition protocol for penetration, ballistics, all these kind of things. During their test, they ended up adopting the 10mm, and they had a 10mm with a downloaded 180 grain bullet. And they shot that for however many years. And it got to the point where they were shooting, their standard model was the S&W 1076 in a 10mm is what they were shooting. Agents didn't like it. They're saying, hey, this gun's too big. It's too heavy. So they start looking. But once the 10mm were too big and heavy, they're like, all right, we're going to switch. So they switched to a 40. More powerful than a 9, but not quite as big as a 45. So they switched over, started shooting all 40s. So once the FBI switches, if it's good for the FBI, it's good for the police departments. police departments across the country say, all right, we're going to go to 40 because that's what the FBI uses. That's what we're going to start using now. So then you see the same thing in civilians. Just like we talk to our cop buddies, they're talking to their cop friends, goes for FBI, civilians. Everybody starts carrying the 40 because that's what the FBI uses. Another thing that happened right around that same time is they had the 1994 federal weapons assault ban, which limited the magazine count. So you could only have 10 rounds in your magazine. So a lot of people now, you really don't have a debate on, the 9mm will hold more than the 40 or 45, or you could have 10 rounds is all you could have in your weapon. So people are like, well, if I only got 10 rounds, I'll take 10 rounds of bigger 40 caliber ammo. So this is all leading to just 40 getting pumped up because it's still not quite as big and heavy as a 45, but you got more stopping power than the 9. You get through there, and again, the 45s are typically larger frames too, so people were picking the 40s because the frame size is more in line with the 9mm. So you got same round count, same frame size, bigger bullet. Anyway, so when the 40 came out, and it says in 1990 the 9mm was 100 years old, and the 9mm proponents liked it, and kind of the initial draw because it was a faster, lighter bullet. But you got some of the old school guys that are like, hey, a 45, it's kind of like in the deer hunting rounds. It's like, do you want something light and fast, or do you want something big and heavy and slow? So it kind of led to the 40, again, being the middle ground. But once that weapons ban was gone, then the round count kind of came back into effect. And at the same time, engineers were reworking on the 9mm and how to utilize the higher velocity, higher rotational factors to make it a more accurate round. So it got to the point where, due to the FBI standards, they've got 12 to 18 inch penetration is what it's got to be certified. Well, they got it where the 9mm, and all these companies are making 9mm that gets the same penetration as a 40 does, but it's a lighter bullet and you can get more of them in there. So all of these things keep leading, so everybody's kind of trending more towards 9 the farther and farther you get along. The FBI they did tons of tests because they're always trying to stay on the forefront of this stuff, when their main thing came down to shootability. And they figured out that their agents across the board shot 9mm better than they did 40 or 45 or any of these calibers, because a 9mm has, a 40 caliber has between 10 and 40% more recoil than a 9mm does. So what they figured out is that first shot was accurate across the board, but when they're doing quick follow-up shots, the accuracy tailed off really quick, shooting those bigger guns, heavier recoil. Another huge factor that came into it is when you talk about the magazine sizes. So on a 40 caliber, they're averaging 15 rounds. So on 3 mags, you're getting 45 rounds. Well, you take that compared to the 19 rounds that you're getting out of a 9mm. So in the same 3 magazines, you get 57 9mm mags versus the 45 on the 40s. So from a law enforcement standpoint, they're like, look, we can carry more bullets, same amount of mags, less space on the officer's gear, and to carry it around, and making them, like we talked about earlier, all uniform where everybody's shooting 9, where if I get injured or run out, I can borrow something from Brett or Kevin or whoever. And again, like their studies are finding that for what we're talking about, concealed carry, it didn't matter as much as it did law enforcement, because statistically they're saying in a shootout situation, civilians, it's 1 mag is what you're shooting. So whether that's because people don't carry backups, don't reload, the fight's over that fast, for whatever reason, it's not as important. The last thing that I found out was on the 40 caliber, even though it's got 40% more recoil, the wound cavity is only 10% bigger on average than it is 9mm. So that's kind of the, layman's term history of the breakdown on 9 and 40. Do you guys have any initial thoughts hearing any of that, or?
To me, none of that surprises me. The 40, not that it's not a great round, it is, but like we talked about before, it lost a lot of appeal just because of round count and modern ballistics and modern bullets.
For sure.
If you take any, not just handguns, rifles, everything, ballistics technology along with the weapons, everything has advanced so far from back in those times that it doesn't surprise me at all that 9's there. And now, I mean, we can't get rid of 40s around here. And it's just, there's a few people that are stuck on them, but very few. We see more people that want 45 than 40.
Yeah.
And the thing I didn't realize until I started looking down this, a 40 caliber is, I won't say it's the same size, but it's the same as a 10 millimeter.
Yeah, it's the same bullet there.
Whereas a 9 millimeter is a .355 or 35 and a half caliber. So I honestly did not realize that for a long time. So when we were talking earlier about like the people, like how 10 millimeters are popular because of bear country and stuff, is that, would they be just as good with a 40, or is there something, do you guys know if there's a difference as far as?
I think when you're talking about like bear and stuff like that, they're probably a little different structure wise than a human you're shooting at. I think
Thicker
bone structure and stuff.
There, in your article you sent out, there was a gentleman that did protect himself and take a bear down with a 9 millimeter. The 40, the reason you're going to have a bigger bullet, so you're looking at 115, 100. It's actually, cops are usually carrying like 140 grain now, 9 millimeter bullets compared to 180 back in the day. So you got the weight difference there alone. So if you're carrying 57 rounds, you don't want that much. 40 grains of each bullet is a lot.
Yeah, ounces make pounds.
And then I would be curious to see if the FBI has looked into the plus P version of 9 millimeter now as well. Because from what I remember, the plus P is actually penetrates further now than the 40 does. So, and that's why most police departments are switching to it now.
And when you talk about bears, it's the same reason why you have different caliber rifles, whether you're going to go shoot a coyote or a deer or a moose or an elk. There's different stuff that's made for.
I think it's like when you're talking about the 10 millimeter for like bear country or stuff, I think it's the efficiency of it. No different than around here. You could say take a 243 rifle and kill any deer around here. You take a 243 to an elk out in that country, that's a whole different. Not that it won't kill it. It's the.
It really comes down to the energy of the bullet.
Yes.
So that's why a 10 millimeters becomes so popular, because it's the heavier 180 to 200 grain bullet with the energy of a 45 now. So instead of 260 grain or 250 grain bullet of a 45 that's slower, the penetration's so much greater on a 10 millimeter. It's just unbelievable. And that's
you get
why
the extra rounds as well.
It's no different than an elk. If you're shooting a 300 grain, 300 Win Mag or a 243, the energy on that 243 is non-existent at 300 yards. On that 300 Win Mag, 300 yards, it's significantly much more because it's a 300 grain bullet. You know what I mean? It's the same difference in pistols or rifles. Obviously, the distance is way different, but
Yeah, so on the hunting side, you just want to be ethical with what you're doing, and I think that's kind of part of the discussion when it goes to that. Not that you are going out there to ethically kill a bear, you're defending yourself, but it's the same type of conversation.
But at the same point in time, you wouldn't want a 22 pistol out there trying to shoot a bear for
you
want
want to stop that bear 10 feet away from you, not on top of you. That's the idea. So you're going to pick something like a 10 millimeter that's got a lot of energy 10 feet away than it does from me to you. You know what I mean? That's where a 9 millimeter is it's going to work. If it's right on top of me, it's going to work. But I don't want it to be right on top of me. I want to stop it or deter it before it gets there. So
it's kind of like that joke about the bear spray. The guy's getting ready to go up into bear country or whatever for the first time, and he stops in the local hardware store and he's like, I need something to protect myself from bears. I'm gonna get this bear spray. And the guy's like, all right, well, when you go up there, you got to be careful and learn the difference between a black bear and a brown bear, because a black bear will run off, but a brown bear is going to attack you. And the guy's like, all right. He's like, so you can tell by their scat when you're out in the woods. He's like, well, how do you tell them the scat? And he's like, oh, it's real easy. He's like, if you're walking and you see some bear turds on the trail and they've got blueberries in them, that's clear sign that that's a black bear. You don't got to worry about it. They eat blueberries and stuff like that. It's like, but on the other hand, if you're walking down there and you see bear scat and it's got like clothing in it and it smells like pepper spray, that's how you know it's a brown bear. It's like, go get yourself a pistol.
I think the whole takeaway on that is I'm not surprised at all by the bullets, but the whole conversation, even talking about 10 millimeter for the bear country stuff, is overall from a pistol standpoint, from a 9 millimeter, there's no argument that overall statistically people are going to shoot a 9 millimeter better.
Oh, for
all
sure.
The follow-up rounds, everything else. One shot doesn't necessarily matter. So if you take like the 10 millimeter for the bear country discussion, if you can barely handle it and can only shoot one shot and then can't get back on target again, well, it still doesn't do you much good.
Absolutely.
You know, so there's always that compromise. Rifles with big game are the same difference. If you can shoot your 300 win one time and then never want to shoot it again, well, how much good does that do you?
You break your shoulder in the process.
We go back to that story I told about buying that 7 mag the day before deer season. That's why I got rid of it. That thing shot so hard, like you could not be accurate shooting it. You know, I probably could have put a different butt stock or something like that on it, but you just dreaded shooting it every time because you felt it in your shoulder every single shot. Again, but you go back to, you know, carrying and, you know, the being prepared with, you know, what pistol you're carrying. It goes back to, you know, knowing what you're carrying and what situation. And again, like I always carry in the woods just because there's been times, I was talking to Kevin this morning about it, where on public land up around here, I've been out shed hunting and been miles from the truck by myself and came across, I don't know whether it was a homeless camp or whether they were cooking meth or something out in the woods, but some sort of camp out in the woods. And, you know, it could have been a lot of different things. And you're out there by yourself in the middle of the woods.
Either way, it's people that have nothing to lose.
So, yeah.
From the retail side, I also have to put this in there that 9 millimeters gotten so popular for the biggest reason is it's available.
That's one of the things that came up in the research too. I'm glad you brought it up, that they say there are 3 times as many commercial options for 9 millimeter ammo as there are for 40.
Same with the handgun itself, not just the ammo. For the handgun itself, they don't make a 40 in every single model anymore. They just don't. I get the question all the time for the Hellcat or, you know, the P365, or they don't offer those in 40. So, I mean, the manufacturers are seeing the decline in 40 as well.
I was going to say, and that tells you that we're not the only one seeing the decline in other calibers. Even 45, I feel like, and I may be wrong, but I feel like when we first opened the gun shop, we got more people wanting 45s than we do now.
The only reason I have one is because I wanted a 1911. I wanted a classic 1911.
Well, I mean, everybody should have one, in my opinion. 1911.
He could have went bougie and just got a Prodigy or something.
Well, maybe. Hey, maybe if I hit my next 1,000 molds, we'll get one.
We're already talking about his tax bracket. He can't, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice if they let me have some of it instead of sending it other places, you know. But that's a whole other discussion.
You think yours are bad? Try it on a business
level. Oh, my God. I can't imagine. Yeah, and
add it to a business level, then the sales tax, and oh god.
Well, it's just weird, not to get into specific numbers, but say my income went up by 10%, they are saying I owe 20% more taxes. The rate, like my taxes doubled from what I owed last year to this year, and the amount that the increase was not enough. Like
everybody's taxes went up this year for political reasons. You do know that, right? Like.
Yeah, and that's probably part of it.
Us
but
poor people just don't see it very much.
Well, and, you know, not to get into my specifics, but I have got back a refund every year of my life, and I do them, and it's like, what? How the hell do I owe money? Like, I have too much money taken out as it is, and you're saying I owe you guys some more on top of it?
But if you look at it from a business standpoint even, we're talking about our prices not going up. So just forget the Kydex. We just talk about leather holsters.
Yep.
They've been $35. They're $5 more now in 10 years. Our tax bracket, the more you sell, the more your tax bracket goes up. So then you add taxes on it, you're making even less. And that's why that's one of the things I'm proud of, that we've been able to build like we have without raising the prices. Kydex has gone up because it's had to. Everything to do with Kydex is expensive. Material, labor, everything. But overall, they've only gone up 30%.
Yeah, but you've made sacrifices to help combat the cost.
Well, and I will tell you, like, we talk about Mike Carr on here all the time, and he's one of the world's greatest sales guys, but he is 100% right in his strategy. He said you got to have one or two of the 3 things. You either got to have the best price, the best product, or the best customer service. It can be any of those 2. But I feel like here we have all 3. Our prices are competitive. Nobody's going to beat our service. And we don't send anything out the door that's not perfect or that we wouldn't wanted to carry. So the value there is across the board, where a lot of people could cheap out on their service, or maybe make it out of thinner material, or maybe do this or that or the other. And you've kept it competitive on all three of the categories.
Yeah, we've been lucky to be able to, and like Brett said, for me it's weird to say it, but Brett knows because he's been here as long. Just sacrifices long term to make it happen that way,
Yeah.
There's cheaper holsters on the market without a doubt, but there's not a cheaper holster on the market that's anywhere even in the same arena as ours. And I don't say that arrogantly, like we're the best. There's some other great holsters out there, but the other holsters that are on par with ours are more expensive than ours.
And you've been able to do that and when I say sacrifice, I don't just mean you're taking food off your table, because that's the end goal, no matter what. So we're not trying to get sympathy by anybody. You're sacrificing by showing up extra time or making the molds yourself instead of buying them. The luxury of the time, you guys getting together, making one mold, and it takes how much time when you start to finish right now? Just how much time for one mold?
If you gave me a brand new gun I'd never seen, I can model it in hour and a half, 2 hours, cut the mold in a couple hours. So by the end of the day, I could.
So a day, you got 12 hours roughly.
But then you got testing in it, and it's never one.
It's 2 or 3.
But in the past, you used to be able to get on your computer and click it and buy it, and you were done. You just waited till it to get there. You know what I mean?
We were kind of done, because then we had to sit there and jack with
tape
them to
it
get
up
them to fit right.
But that's what I'm saying. You're making sacrifices by investing into the business.
Oh, without doubt.
Long term, keep the costs lower.
Profit wise, CNC machining's the worst thing we ever done. Profit wise,
yeah.
Service wise and stuff to the customers, and growing wise, it's going to be the best thing we've ever done. So you can't look at it as one aspect.
And we're getting to the point now where we've got so many of these guns and lights modeled that we just hit our 1,000th mold that we've cut and put in service. So we've got 1,000 combinations of hands, lights, inside, outside, and we
haven't even touched it.
No,
yet.
and I could probably do 3,000 more before it ever slowed down to the point where I felt like I was.
The problem is it still won't, because now I was looking at numbers this morning on just. I look about once a week and just kind of see what's trending, because it's weird, because we'll sell a ton of leather holsters for a period for whatever reason, and then it will slow down some. Kydex will be more. I was looking at outside the waistband holsters. We sell more inside the waist light bearing holsters than we do outside the waist holsters, which to me is crazy, but it just shows you how much of the market we've gained just by offering lights. It's pretty drastic, because a lot of people can't do it because they have to do it the way we do.
Yeah, they just choose not to.
And really for them, they're going to have to go buy a 70, 80, I don't know what a plate costs for them, and a trim pass, and they're going to be out all this money to maybe make 2 of them ever, where we can take our blocks and...
Well, and the problem is, for most people, including us, which this is where I say, going to CNC machine profit-wise is a short-term worst thing we've ever done, because we're not charging very much more at all for them in the big picture. And for every one of those, we have to have the real gun, the real light, just for test fitting purposes. I mean, that's what me and Brett were talking about. We got $50,000 or $60,000 in pistols.
Yeah, don't talk about taxes this year.
Sitting in the freaking gun shop. And for most shops, you just can't justify doing that, like you said. But we decided to go all in on it, and long term, it's going to be the best thing we've ever done.
And it's so nice because we get a call. Like, we took a call this morning. The guy's like, "Hey, this doesn't fit right," and they come across my desk because they're like, "Hey, look at this. You're R&D. What's going on with this?" And I get it, and I go out and I've got the real gun in the shop, and I'm putting it in there. It's like, this thing fits like a glove. But because we do CNC, I know every one of those that we send out is identical. So I know I've sold 1,000 of these holsters already, and I get one back. I'm like, what's going on? So we had a conversation, and I don't know whether the guy maybe wanted it to fit a little bit different, or what happened exactly, and it's really not important. But
it's really not. And in the big picture, in manufacturing, when you get to the level of, I won't go into specifics, but how many holsters we send out per day is drastically different than it used to be, and way higher than most other companies. The something's going to happen in manufacturing.
Return rate is going to be there. Yes. You just got to figure out where that level of acceptance is on your return.
And for me, it's weird coming from a non-retail all the time background. Mm-hmm. Well, retail, but I'm selling oxygen where it's perfect every single time. Yeah, there's no returns. So I come and then I see returns and they drive me crazy because I'm like, all right, what did we screw up? Why did this? And I understand some of them where, you know.
But a lot of it, and that's why we are so adamant about starting this podcast. And same thing, podcast short term isn't a big help to people. It's when you guys start sharing the podcast, when you get it out there to people beforehand. But a lot of the returns are somebody brand new, never carried it inside the waistband holster, and then they see a light bearing version of something. That's what I'm going to carry. Well, if you think this is a foreign object in your pants, try carrying a light bearing holster. For you know what I mean? They don't know what they want, and they haven't adjusted to what they want.
And I would tell you too, and one of the things because I design them all, so I got to see every one of them that comes through. And my biggest tip to people who haven't had a light before would be pick what you want, get what you're happy with, but don't just get the biggest light because it looks the coolest. Same reason you don't need a 80 power scope on your deer rifle when you're hunting in the timber. Get something
you don't necessarily need a 1500 lumen light on your pistol for something that you shouldn't be shooting over 7 yards with in self-defense.
Yeah, you got a small pistol. You don't want a huge light that sticks out really farther in the barrel. Ideally you'd want it to be, concealable and not taking up a lot of extra footprint.
Yeah.
But
and I'm like you, the returns, I mean, they're just part of it. But the reason it doesn't bother me is because we got the customer service to 99% of the returns. We're exchanging them for something else, which is what they should have bought originally, so we can educate those people and get them what they want, or they can carry instead of not trying again.
To be honest, we're probably a little less worried about returns because we've seen what returns used to be in the old building. Man, it'd be 500 on the wall.
But just
all
like
times.
You talk about, you take it personally when the look of the holster. I take it personally when I get one back and somebody says it doesn't fit right.
Yeah,
I'm
dare you, Kyle.
I'm like, dude, trust me. And so I automatically not get defensive, but I want to know what's wrong with it. Was it something machine got out of spec for a minute, or did they get the wrong one, or can I do something to that holster to make it a little bit better where we don't have the issue?
And that's the good thing, is nothing's ever perfect. We may change these molds 10 times in the next 5 years, so nothing's ever perfect as long as we can build off of it. And then sometimes it's just what a personal preference is. What I like, you guys may like, let alone hundreds of thousand customers that we're sending these holsters to yearly. You get a lot of opinions in there, and not meaning ours are right or theirs is right or vice versa. It just, there's no one perfect anything. It don't matter if it's gun related or not. If anybody had one perfect product for everybody in the world, they would be bigger than Amazon,
Sure.
It's just,
we're going to be there.
Well, that's a goal.
Yeah.
So all of this that we've been talking to really leads in, and we've got another question from a female, which I'd love to see that. I feel like women are sometimes hesitant to reach out and, about the guns and stuff like that. So number one, I'm glad for this lady asking the question, and I'm glad that we have female listeners to the show too, for a show that can be construed mainly, towards a male audience. We're here for everybody. So if you're listening, do not hesitate. There are no dumb questions. We would love to answer anything we could. But this question is from Cassie in Shawnee, Kansas. And she says, I am new to firearms and eventually want to carry concealed. How do you recommend I get more comfortable with guns so I can carry responsibly in the future? Which is, I feel like, a really self-aware question. So she's got the desire to protect herself, but she's got no background, maybe nobody to teach her. For somebody that's brand new, whether this is a guy or girl or whoever, what's kind of the entry to getting into the gun world for people?
By asking that question tells me, because I've done this long enough, that she's going to be okay in learning. That's the people that don't put that to the forefront. For women specifically, because that's who's asking the question, I think the best thing to do, and there's a lot of women trainers out there nowadays, which is great. Mm-hmm. They have women's only classes. Like if you're around us, Frontier Justice has some. Wherever your local ranges are, I would almost guarantee you there's women only classes.
Which takes away the stigma of the guy trying to be John Wick with his 58 round mag.
Yeah, it takes away all the, uncomfortableness of it, because if you're not in firearms and you're going into firearms, you already feel uncomfortable. Last thing you need to do is having somebody even more uncomfortable.
Making it feel like you're being judged.
And that's why I tell people all the time, people especially come in the gun shop and you can tell the girl or wife or whoever is trying to, and the guy's like, "Arr, arr, arr," and then he wonders why she isn't learning anything. Well,
yeah, the first thing I could say is get away from your husband trying to learn.
and it don't matter,
well, they say
me
that,
included.
They say that about playing golf too. Like, don't try and teach your spouse how to golf because you're going to fight.
No. Go to somebody else you trust. If you're a woman, I would highly suggest the women's classes, but do hands-on classes. Don't go do just nothing but book classes. Those are great. But the only way you're going to get familiar with it is doing it with actual guns.
And you don't even have to buy a gun to start those classes, because majority of instructors will loan you their gun or rent you their guns. They'll start with smaller calibers. They'll start with all the basics to get you comfortable, and that's where I highly recommend it, just like Kevin.
That was kind of my first thought, too, for somebody, say you can't afford to go to the class right now. Or like me with my kids or my wife, I taught all of them how to shoot with a .22 pistol to start off with, because there's not a lot of recoil. We got to shoot, we got familiar handling a gun, taking it off safety, keeping the barrel downrange, things like that. So I think starting with the smaller calibers and working your way up to get more confident is probably a good way to go. The women's only classes, I think, are a fantastic idea. And then I would go one step even further, if they've got multiple guns there, shoot them. But there's also, once you get more comfortable, I know there's a lot of ranges that rent guns. Mm-hmm. So you can go rent 4, 5, 8, however many guns you want, but fit one where it's like the Excalibur sword in the stone. Like, you pick it up, you're like, that thing fits my hand perfect. I shoot it great. I'm comfortable with it. It's, the right size. All of that.
Yeah, if you're brand new, I'm like Brett, I wouldn't even suggest you go buy a new gun until you've done some training.
Oh, yeah.
Because after you do some training, and this is men, women, it don't matter, what you think or don't think you want in a gun will change.
There is an unconventional method as well that women, men, all the above can check, and it is your local churches. Almost majority of church groups have a group of people that are
church security teams.
Yeah, security teams or vice versa.
Our church had an actual firearms group that met once a month.
And that's what I'm saying. They're getting all over. I hear about them all the time in the store now. So if you have a church, a local church that you attend, just talk to people. And I would almost bet there's a group of people that's willing to work with you and get you started.
The other thing I would say, and this goes for whether, like we talked about, getting on the airplane with your gun, or if you're going to drive to Disney World, or if you're going on a road trip, know the laws for your state that you live in and any state that you're going to take that firearm to. And whether that's on a vacation, flying, just, we live on the border here. You're driving into Missouri, Kansas, back and forth, just know the different laws for the different states you're going to be in while you're carrying that weapon.
So you're saying, don't just say you'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Actually check your laws?
I would highly recommend checking the laws. And the other thing I'd really urge people to do is look at some sort of the insurance policies, and I'm going to research those more too. There's a lot of them that are really affordable that provide protection if you have to use it. And I know that USCCA, they've got huge volumes of information on different states. And I would start there, if you're going to start researching.
Yep. Go to trainers, get trained, and then once you do decide what pistol you want and buy one, train with that as much or more than you trained in the other classes, and just make it a habit to do.
And one other thing that I just thought of, and we talked about it. Remind me the name of the laser training system. Is it
Mantix?
Yeah,
Mantix.
Mantis.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Look at getting a Mantis system, or I'm sure there's other manufacturers of them, but some sort of...
Yeah, because on that you can use your actual gun that you do choose to get used to dropping the mag, manipulating it, stuff like that.
And that's something, a lot of people, whether it's lifting weights or, shooting their bow or doing that using that Mantis system you don't have to take an hour a day to do it. If you took 10 minutes a day and did it, or a couple times a week, anything you do is going to help.
10 minutes a week, you'd be ahead of 99% of people carrying.
And you want to get to the point where, through any training, where it's automatic, where you're not thinking about if you have to draw your weapon, where's the safety, is it loaded, all of these things that come into effect.
And especially females nowadays, I feel like that's why the market's growing so much, is there's just so much crappy shit in the society nowadays, and stuff happening, and parking lot stuff like what we were talking about. It's just, they need to be prepared in some way.
They haven't. I've seen these videos, and I don't know what triggers them. It's like you look at one and then you get all of them, but groups of thugs just attacking women, like just run up and punch them like on subway platforms and stuff. And I don't know what the background in any of these videos are, but there's a lot of troubling stuff out there where I would urge anybody to, if you can concealed carry, do it. If you don't, maybe, get some method of self-defense and just keep your head on a swivel. Maybe you really want to walk down the street to go to that store there, but there might be a group of people out in front of it. Yeah, you might not go there. You might go later. Just keeping your head on a swivel. Don't be looking at the phone, and just staying alert when you're out in public.
Another thing I'd tell people in general, one of the business mentors I had and still have to this day told me when going through, it was talking about accounting and accountant and all that stuff that goes with business, is you want somebody with the heart of a teacher that is teaching you. Just because you're paying them doesn't mean they get to do whatever they want with your money or your taxes. Make them teach you. Well, the same thing is with concealed carry. There's no one trainer that knows everything. I know I'm going to break some trainers' hearts out there thinking that they're the best in the world. There's a lot of good trainers that look at things multiple different ways. If whoever you're going to, I don't care if it's a woman class, the church, the whatever, whoever's teaching you, make sure they have the heart of a teacher to teach you. There is no dumb questions. The only dumb questions are the ones that you don't ask. So, and I run into this a lot with these firearms guys in general, and I hate to say that, but it's true. Mostly it's the firearms instructor guys that think they're better or think they got some persona to them, which is not what they should have in that environment. Especially as a female, if you can't ask questions to them and get an answer, go somewhere else. Because even as men, I've seen it in some of these places, like, hey, these people are here to learn. You don't got to be a dick. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
It happens a lot because you get that persona, or a lot of these guys, trainers, could be military guys, and just come off harsh or whatever. Well, you need to teach these people, not. So if you can't feel like you can ask anything and get an answer, go somewhere else. You're not at the right trainer.
And everybody's coaching style and the way they take instruction's different. So that guy who's real hardline may be good for a certain group of people, where other people he may not. So like,
yeah, if you're more in an advanced class, those guys are probably great.
And
but if you're a beginner or guy, girl, anything, you need to know answers. And it doesn't matter if it's a stupid answer, because the answers in your head are what makes you feel comfortable.
And the only thing I can see being a universal need for a real hard line is the safety aspect of, when you're out on the range handling the gun, the safety, has got to come first. Now there's, ways to teach that where you're not being a jerk to people, but, and I feel like most qualified trainers, that's going to be their primary focus anyway.
It should be, yeah. It's just like anything. There's all sorts of ways to become a quote unquote trainer nowadays. So just because somebody has a title of a trainer doesn't mean they're better than anybody else. So just make sure you can get your questions answered.
And that may be something we look at doing one day, because we've all shot enough and going down the road of getting certified as actual trainers, where we can, talk as trainers to people, and, we don't have to put out the disclaimer, well, I'm not a trainer anymore. But
yeah, and I think it'd be a cool thing to do at some point down the road, is maybe offer limited classes, but not a traditional class. Like today, most of the classes you go to are, do this and just make it a job. So no different than this podcast. We make zero off of this podcast. We're doing it as a service to somebody. I think if there was a training group or organization, even not us, something where it was people that didn't have to make money off of it, that were doing it for the sole purpose of teaching people, not to sell them nothing, not to whatever, but to genuinely help, I think it would change the world of training altogether. Because there's so many of these guys that make their living off of it, and they book class here, class here, class. they just want to get through the day. At the end of the day, I mean, I hate to say it, but some of them don't care.
They're trying to make their rent payment.
Yes. Yeah. It's a job to them, but it's like, okay, dude, I got to be here until 5, ask her a few questions, I can leave. Whereas if you had a group of people, even if it wasn't us, a group of people that were in that situation where they could help and maybe not be the best trainers in the world, but do it with the heart of teaching and not an alternative method to it, I think it would change a lot of things in the industry.
So I would tell people, if anybody's listening and would be interested in that, shoot an email over to support@muddyrivertactical.com, and if it's not us, we may be able to bring in somebody for the day or do something like that in the future if the demand's there.
Or affiliate with different people that we know through the industry that, you know, we can partner in different things and do it to help people, not to make money.
And speaking of, you know, the podcast and, you know, we're doing this, if there's somebody who would like to sponsor the podcast, again, reach out to support@muddyrivertactical.com. You know, not saying that, you know, we're going to be, you know, taking on every sponsor on earth, but there's definitely opportunities for people to reach out and do that if they wanted to. I know next weekend, I'm really excited to shoot next week. We've got Brett Courtwright from War Horses for Vets. He's going to come talk to us about the work they do with helping soldiers transition pre and post deployment, police officers, you know, any public service people, any military, helping them with PTSD, stuff like that. They do a lot of really good work. They're local here in Kansas City, so we'll have a good talk with Brett next week. So definitely, if you're listening to this, tune in next week for sure. We'll get him on here and kind of pick his brain, and he's got a lot of good stories, a lot of good background. So that may be a 2-parter with Brett.
We won't finish in one day because we'll have funny stories with Brett, and then we'll have the serious stuff of War Horses and all the good stuff they do. And it's kind of the same thing. They're a nonprofit. The same thing I just said about training. They're doing it with the heart to help people, and that's why they can do good.
Yeah, they do an excellent job, and you know, my goal is to get their name out there because I feel like there's a lot of people who could greatly benefit from them, and the fact that Brett's an old friend too.
Absolutely.
So, cool. As always, we got code MRT Podcast. If you use that on the website or in the gun store, it will get you 15% off holsters, t-shirts, hats, stuff like that. Not guns, unfortunately. I don't even get 15% off guns. But so do that. You can follow us on all of the major social media platforms. Look up Muddy River Tactical. If you have problems finding podcasts, you can look, like I said, muddyrivertactical.com. We've got a videos tab on there. Got all of Kevin's gun reviews, training tips, podcasts are on there. Anything like that.
We are going to have Brett doing some rifles here pretty soon, he said the other day.
What are we doing?
You said you're going to do rifle videos.
Oh, yeah. Put me on the spot like that.
Now it'll make him do it.
Are you making them, like, is he doing Nerf guns or is he doing...
No, Kevin does the pistols, and I think I'm going to start trying to do some review videos on rifles, shotguns, stuff like that.
That'll be really cool.
Kind of give somebody a little different.
For those of you that don't know, Brett here, he's kind of warmed up a little bit from the podcast, but even the first podcast, he is shitting bricks about it all.
I'm
sitting over there.
I'm definitely camera shy.
Like, don't look at me.
Well,
and all
I remember coming over here to the studio the first time. I'm like, Brett, you realize they can't see you, right? You're just talking to me across the table. He's like, I know they're watching.
Yeah, they're definitely watching.
So that's always been his holdup on YouTube. Is just, and it is different. Like I said, I look at my first YouTube videos and I'm like, damn, that's terrible. But there's a transition to it. It's just
do it.
But this is kind of an in between for him. But he's got a lot of knowledge and more rifle stuff than what I do, and it's a lot of cool stuff that comes through the shop that people are interested in. So it'll kind of split the workload where you guys don't have to look at me all the time. You can look at Brett sometimes too.
The cool thing I'd like to see is not even like new stuff, but maybe old stuff. So maybe you get a trade-in or an estate sale that comes in.
I've got some buddies that definitely know that industry way more than I do. So maybe we'll do a little bit of...
If you get a Gatling gun or a cannon in, we're taking it up to the range and we're shooting that thing.
I'm down.
So what do they call that? Collaborating? We can collaborate with... There's a guy that comes in the gun shop that's super into like old stuff,
military
and
rifles,
has a
guns.
YouTube channel that does well. So we can collab or whatever you call that on YouTube.
Maybe the three of us just need to go up there Pawn Star style and shoot it.
Yeah,
because they always got cool stuff.
We got Chumley,
Chum Brett, or Brettley. Brettley's pretty good.
Me and you did just visit Pawn Star store.
We did go out there when we were in Vegas.
So which one would I be? Would you be? You'd have to be the old man then. So would I be Rick or
No,
or
you're
am I
not Rick.
Corey?
You're the Corey. You're the tall.
Okay,
tall
so I'm the
son.
Corey. You're the Rick, and old man. He's gone. Oh, Dad, can you imagine Dad on the podcast? God. You'd have to hit this button like every 12 seconds. Let me tell you about that.
Yeah, you'd never hear anything on the podcast.
It's been 9 freaking episodes. I've been waiting to hit that red button. I found my time.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get Brett's old boss on there or something for the old man.
Maybe.
Or I can just hit the voice changer.
Oh.
I'm not going to hit any more buttons.
Yeah.
People are probably sick of hearing me by now.
All right, guys. We appreciate you guys joining us this week. Definitely check in next week. We're going to have Brett from War Horses on here. And until next time, keep practicing and always be prepared.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.